Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kevin Desmond. I'm the CEO of TransLink. I'm in my 17th day on the job. I look forward to, I think I met all the press several months ago for my announcement, and this is, I guess, the next time I've seen all of you, and I look forward to continuing to work over time with the press, with the media, and others on a whole range of topics for TransLink going forward. But today we're going to talk about the Compass program. As you know, last Monday, April 4th, TransLink began one of the last portions of the implementation of the Compass program when we started closing the fare gates. It was a rolling closing of the fare gates. It took place during the course of the week. We had several hundred TransLink employees, volunteers, temporary staff, and full-time station attendants working the stations, and most of those folks are still out at the stations assisting our customers. Any change in the use of a transit system, and in this case a little bit complicated, is an issue that you have to address. Change is not always easy. It's a transition process. So we staffed up to make sure that everything could be done to assist with that transition process, with all of the marketing and communications materials that were put out over the course of many months to get folks ready for one of the final elements of the Compass rollout. And I want to give you some perspective on the program, because I think so far the rollout at this stage of the process has gone rather well for TransLink and our customers. There are issues. With any change and any implementation of something new, there's always going to be some issues. We are watching each and every one of those issues, and I want to assure the public that each and every one of those issues over time will be addressed as effectively and as quickly as possible. So far, we have 800,000 Compass cards in use. 800,000 Compass cards are in use. 94% of the journeys on our system, that's both bus and rail, 94%. are being accomplished with Compass cards. 1.1 million tap-ins just yesterday. 1.1 million during the course of the day tapping the card. On the bus side, it speeded up boardings per boarding by some 2 to 3 seconds by using the Compass tap card as opposed to cash and the prior system. Now, we've achieved this, in my view. I'm new to the region, but I've been involved in 2 prior installations of automated fare collection systems. First in New York many years ago in a magnetic stripe system that's now known as MetroCard, which is now an icon in New York City, and then most recently in Seattle with our Orca system. To get to 94% boardings using the Compass system on our system within a 4-month transition is pretty astonishing from where I come from. Even in Seattle, just to use as an example, and we launched our system in 2009 on the King County Metro system, my system, which is bus. Only about 70% of the boardings are with the Orca system, the rest being primarily cash. So I want to emphasize, by way of context, 94% is a pretty good outcome so far, in my book, transactions with Compass. And I'd like to see that get higher over time. Now, that doesn't mean that everything's perfect. As I said, this is a transition, and we're going to work through the transition and work through the variety of issues. I want to speak to two of those issues, and then I'll be open for questions. There's been press reports over the last number of days of security questions with the Compass system. Our vendor, the builder of the Compass system, is a company called Cubic. Cubic is a very well-known, well-established provider, among other things, of contactless fare collection systems and back-office electronic commerce systems. They have over 20 installations on 3 continents throughout the world. I am very satisfied, because I'm aware of how this industry works, and I'm aware of Cubic as a vendor, that they are following the best practices for electronic commerce and contactless fare technology. I do not believe they've ever been hacked anywhere in the world, and that's something that they would be monitoring very closely. And if anything like that did happen on any of their installations throughout the world, they would have a very, very strong interest in making sure they close those loopholes. But I believe that the core system is very, very secure, meeting worldwide standards. I should point out, some months ago, TransLink passed a very rigorous and difficult audit called PCI, Payment Card Industry Audit, that all the credit card companies require you pass in order to be able to use credit cards to transact business. In this case, putting value on your card. So that's a pretty tall order. We had a challenge back in my previous property in passing the PCI audits. It took a lot of work to get there, and I think that's a point of pride for the Compass folks here to have done that. What was reported earlier this week, however, is the paper ticket, only the paper ticket, not the plastic tickets, only the paper ticket, which you buy for either one ride or a day pass through the vending machines, can be cloned. It's not a hack, it's a clone. They basically just duplicate the information on the card. Now, TransLink knew about this in advance, as did Cubic, and in fact, some of the other Cubic properties throughout the world use the same card that we do, manufacture of the card. And the decision was made to go ahead and bear that risk because there was a back office way to minimize any potential outcome. And that is they run what's called a Hotlist. And now the Hotlist is run continuously, and within an hour, in the back office, Cubic is able to identify any duplicated ticket and kill the ticket right then and there. Now I want to emphasize the people that have been reported, they're committing fraud and they're stealing fares from the system. But in the large scheme of things, since December, we have recorded 35 incidents, 35 since December, that with lost revenue of perhaps $150, $150 since December. Give you some context for that. We collect over $500 million a year in fare revenue. So the solution to make the card much more secure, working with Cubic, which I am going to examine with the folks here and with Cubic, would probably mean a different card, which might be a little bit more expensive on card stock, and some programming change. And we're going to have to weigh the cost and benefits of the potential risk of the cloning and losing a little bit of revenue with the cost of making the change. I'd like to think that the entire system is perfectly secure. These tickets, not quite so. But I want to tell the public that we don't accept fraud, and we have a lot of back office ways to minimize anyone's ability to get many free rides. The second issue I want to address is the accessibility of the system, particularly the SkyTrain system. First, I want to point out that TransLink has a very long and proud history of providing a fully accessible system to the customers who are challenged. 100% of the SkyTrain stations are accessible, meaning anyone in a wheelchair or otherwise with a physical disability can use the system, 100%. 100% of TransLink's buses are fully accessible with ramps and lifts, and that has been the case for a number of years here for TransLink and Coast Mountain Bus. About 3/4 of the bus stops are accessible to people in wheelchairs and disabilities, and we have a program over time working with jurisdictions to continue to improve that. So we take it very seriously. I want to emphasize that, very, very seriously. As we were going into the gate closure program, we understood that there would be issues when the gates closed for some people with a variety of different profound disabilities that would not be able to tap at the disability gates. And we made the decision in the rollout, starting last week, that any unattended fare gate area, we would leave one of the disabled, the wide gates, open at any given time. Now, I want to caveat that in one way. There are about 11, I believe, fare control areas in the SkyTrain system. These are areas within stations that are otherwise accessible. Certain areas do not have an elevator access to those fare control areas. In those areas, we are keeping the gates closed because they are not otherwise accessible, and therefore we're providing the security of the system. But otherwise, if it's attended, the gates are closed, an attendant will then open a gate for someone who needs it, and those attendants are otherwise providing customer service, or the gate should be open. We recognize we haven't been perfect in that, and the other day we heard news of an individual, I believe at the Burrard Street entrance, the Burrard Station entrance, who had to wait for 10+ minutes to get into the station. That's just not acceptable. I've spoken to the president of BCRTC, and she assures me that every effort is being taken to communicate and continue to communicate with her field personnel and her supervision to make sure that we continue with that policy. Moreover, we have been working with support agencies all along for people with disabilities to develop a long-term approach to this. We continue to work with the support agencies, and in fact, next week, with the help of those support agencies, we're launching a survey of folks to get a better sense of how many folks have this challenge, what the nature of their need is, because there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. These folks probably have different types of needs, and we want to do our best to address those needs. So with that, I will take the questions.
We got Beth over here has a question.
You mentioned the incident at Burns SkyTrain station. I myself, this past week, have seen 2 different stations where all the gates were closed and no one was in sight. I spoke to another man today who filmed 5 different videos in the last week of the same situation. So a lot of these people are saying it's really happening more often than not that the gates are closed. And it's not really acceptable that TransLink just says, we're trying to find a fix.
Well, that's not what I said. I said that it was unacceptable, and I've been in contact with the president of the rail system to continue to reemphasize to our personnel. I've heard, first of all, I've seen those stations as well, and I've contacted Vivian King on that very issue. I was at one of the waterfront stations where I saw that. I was at Burrard Street Station this morning, as a matter of fact, on my way in. If a station agent is diverted, and they might be helping somebody, station assistant might be helping someone at a ticket vending machine, they might be over there and the gate's closed. So we need to work through those things. So to the extent to which people are observing that, they might be some of those fare control areas that are not otherwise accessible. There are 11, staff can probably tell you what those 11 are offline. But otherwise, we are doing our best to reinforce with the field personnel that this is the procedure over the next few months. Longer term solution, more permanent solution, we're going to take these next 3 months to work with the support groups and the individuals to see what the best solution will be.
You're good. Question for John Woodward over here, and then Jill Drews over here.
So the SkyTrain union is telling us that they're having trouble being there because they have other, at the gates, that is, because they have other responsibilities. Some of them are emergencies. They're saying there's no way they can man it 100% of the time, and they're saying perhaps some of those temporary compass info people can continue in their jobs to meet this requirement. Is that something you're considering? If so, how many people are you talking about, and how much would it cost?
That would be something we're considering. I don't know how many, and I don't know how much. That's what we'll be examining over the next 3 years, 3 months.
I mean, the fact that it could be extra wages, would that cut into any savings that the compass card was advertised as to have?
We're going to put all possible solutions on the table. It would be premature for me to say at this point in time what that solution might be. It might be more manpower. It might be other ways that we can address the challenge.
Jill Drews.
So it sounds, Mr. Desmond, that you're sort of characterizing this more as not really a staff shortage, but is there a disconnect, or maybe just like a growing pain in training when it comes to emphasizing with your staff as to the order of things, I suppose, when a disabled person who can't tap in and out shows up?
What I'd say is we're going through a transition. This was a big change. It's a big change for our customers, and it's a big change for our employees. Now, we did all the training and prep in advance, and we're learning as we go. We have a list of things we need to attend to that we're learning over the last, 9 days, 10 days since we closed the gates. Each and every one of them we're going to be attentive to. We're going to resolve them as quickly as possible. One of them is nailing the procedures in the field with the staff. Yes, they have a lot of different duties. I've been out in the system. I've chatted with a number of them. They have their hands full at times. But, candidly, at least the station attendants that I have spoken to, I think they know what their job is. They know what their responsibilities. They know what the burden is, and I think they're going to do their best to meet the challenges before us. And we're a learning organization. We will ultimately figure out the best way to serve our customers, all of our customers, whether they have disabilities or otherwise.
We got a question from Matt Deltica from Metro.
Yeah, Mr. Desmond, what's the protocol in other systems you've been involved with to address these issues, and how do they make sure that people are able to freely go in and out of?
This was not a challenge that I ever had to face in previous environments. Way back in the day when I was in New York, most of the subway stations were not accessible at all. to people with disabilities. Very few stations in New York had elevators, and I think that, in fact, remains the case. Which is the point I just want to reemphasize that our system is incredibly accessible here compared to other rapid transit systems. To the extent to which there are similar dynamics at play, we've been in contact, for example, with Los Angeles, with LAMTA, and solutions that they're looking at. They're looking at, I think, putting a pedestal adjacent to the fare control gate, where someone could either easily make the call to the control center and have the gate open, or potentially have some other way to tap a compass card that could be affixed in a different way to the device that the individual has. So one of the things we will be doing, and we are doing, is reaching out to other properties, see what are good ways to solve this challenge.
During this rollout, when you have increased staffing levels at all these stations, how much is that costing TransLink?
I don't know how to bet on it. We can get back to you offline on that.
To that point about other stations, as far as I know, the King County system has readers for tapping, but it has no gates.
Right, it's the light rail system and the commuter rail system is a proof of payment system.
And so is that the solution you're considering? Open the gates and just allow people to tap in and out? With convenience to let people in?
Well, as I said, I'm in day 17 here, and Compass program's been rolling out, being built and rolled out for many, many years, and there are a lot of reasons to close the gates. So no, I don't think it's on the table to not use the gates that have been installed.
We have a question over here from you, Bailey.
And I want to emphasize, I mean, I've been riding the system every single day, to and from work and going to meetings. So I've been out in the system a lot. I've been at quiet stations. I've been at super busy stations, like at Waterfront, when a C-Bus and a West Coast Express train and one of the SkyTrain trains all arrive at the same time, and people have to kind of queue up a little bit to get out of the gates. The system works. People are using it. They're tapping in, they're tapping out 1.1 million times in the system. That's both bus and rail. So to suggest that we would not, that we would reverse the decision to have the fare control systems in place, I don't really think that's an acceptable outcome. I think we can address the issues that are coming forward, and it's a fairly limited number of people. And because of that, I think we can find solutions to the issues that we have.
You've been on the job for 17 days, as you said. This is a system that was at the center of a controversial referendum, and you're the new guy in charge. Are you feeling a pressure to sort of be responsive and strike a new responsive path by dealing with these two issues today?
Clearly, I went into this job with my eyes open. I was aware of the challenges Compass had. And my job is to lead this very big, diverse agency with just a multiplicity of issues, this being just one of them. I'd like to think that Compass is very close to its completion point. And after we're done with this transition period, that it will be a fact of life. Let me give you an example of that. When I was in New York in the early 1990s, and we were installing the MetroCard system, which in those days it was really before contactless systems were proven fully. We installed a magnetic stripe system called MetroCard. And the initial rollout, I believe, I may get the numbers wrong, was only about 70 stations or something had MetroCard gates installed, what you call gates, the turnstiles, out of a system with over 400 stations, 480 stations or something like that. We were eviscerated in the press. The public thought we were dopes because we only installed, I wasn't involved in the program, the people that were running this only started it up with 70 or 80 stations where MetroCard could be accepted. But they started building it. They wanted to get it moving. The problem is you might pay with a token in Queens, get into Manhattan, and on the way home you'd have to use MetroCard. So it wasn't all linked up. So there were growing pains. There were a lot of growing pains with MetroCard system. People figuring out how to put cash on their card, what kind of card to get, so on and so forth. Fast forward a number of years later, as I mentioned before, MetroCard's an icon in New York City now, an absolute icon. When we rolled out Orca in Seattle, in the Seattle region of 7 agencies in 2009, same issue. People were trying to figure out how to use it, how do you use the website, how do you add value, vending machines, all of these things. Fast forward to 2015, we did annual surveys at Metro, customer satisfaction surveys in the same way that TransLink does. The #1 attribute product that King County Metro provided to the public was Orca. Orca. compared to our mobile information devices, the bus system itself, cleanliness of stations, security, Oracle was number one. It takes time for these things to build in. And that's why I'm actually very confident, given that we have something like 94% share of the transactions already with Compass, that we're on the road for Compass to be accepted, and I hope become a very, very important part of the success of the TransLink system going forward.
We have a question from Global over here, and then Kelly at the Sun and CKNW here.
The 1.1, 1.3 taps, does that include the paper cards as well?
Yes, I believe so. That would be any Compass product, which would be the paper and the plastic. Yeah.
Do you
On
have,
both Bus, Rail, West Coast Express, and C-Bus, correct, team?
That's right.
Yes.
do you have any idea how many of those taps are fraudulent?
A tiny number, as I said, so 1.1 million per day taps. So far, from what we've heard from Qubit, since December, we've had 35 fraudulent tickets, 35 since December out of 1.1 million per day. So you can do the math back to December on the number of transactions.
But it's 35 you know of.
Yeah, the system, I believe the system can identify all of those because we run what's called a Hotlist. So the system can identify the duplicated tickets. And as I said before, both Cubic and TransLink were aware of this before we launched the system. And TransLink made a decision. I wasn't part of that. TransLink made the decision. We're going to go with the less secure card because we think the cost of that compared to the cost of making it more secure is pretty small. And they built in this back office way to prevent it from people using it multiple times.
So basically, you just disable the card. When you spot a fraudulent card on the list, you
kill it.
You nuke it.
It's what we would call you just kill it. You completely disable it. It's worthless asset.
So they might have gotten to Surrey, but they're not going to get back to Vancouver.
Exactly.
Super.
And that's why, as I said, we estimate of those 35 instances since December, maybe $150 in lost revenue. Yeah, should it be 100% secure? Sure, it would be great if it was 100% secure. But in the context of $500 million a year in revenue, a few $100 in lost revenue, I don't think fraud's a good thing. I don't think stealing's a good thing. And I'd like our customers and taxpayers to understand that the people who are doing this, maybe a whole lot of free trips.
Did they have that in New York? Did they have the
Excuse me?
same problem in New York when they brought in the Metro card?
No, it's different technology.
Oh.
And that way back when on the mag stripe, I don't know what, thinking about it, I'm sure there are plenty of ways to get fraud on a magnetic stripe card. And the reason that the industry went from mag stripe to chips, same way credit card industry has gone, is the chip technology is much more secure than magnetic stripe. You can do a lot of duplication at mag stripe.
The clone implies a copy. Wouldn't the copy expire at the same time as the original? So it sounds like it might be more sophisticated than just a simple clone.
I don't know all the technical details. I consider it a clone. And you can clone, I think you can probably clone it and have multiple fares on the ticket, but we can kill it really fast.
Kelly.
I don't know how far you could get with the clone.
Kelly Sinowski has been waiting for a question.
Yeah, just on that point on the security. Sorry, Kelly.
That's all right, John. You can
Just Harry Baines letter
Did you
yesterday.
yield the floor to your colleague? Is that right?
Well, he's just going to butt in anyway.
Harry Baines' letter yesterday, and we found it. It was from 3.5 years ago. Seemed to imply there was a paper ticket hole in security, but there was also a Compass card hole. Is that true?
I don't know who you're talking about. Who's Harry?
Harry Baines is the NEP MLA who was the transit critic provincially in 2012. Wrote a letter to TransLink and to the provincial government warning of security flaws, which we did a survey.
Plastic tickets, which are the core of the system, which are the core of how Cubic has built the contactless system and the back office transaction processing, meets worldwide security standards. We passed the PCI audit that I mentioned before. It's a very secure system. Is everything perfectly secure? Ask Apple and how the FBI figured out ultimately how to get the iPhone. But I'm confident, because they are one of the worldwide leading operators and builders and designers of these types of systems, that we and our vendor and our partner agencies, our sister agencies throughout the world, will try to keep one step ahead of people trying to break into these systems. I'm confident that it's a secure system. As much as the technology that is available today worldwide should be secure.
Kelly, do you still want to ask
Yeah, I
something?
just have a question, well, I have two questions actually. I'm wondering, initially when you were rolling out these things, you had all these extra personnel on board to help with the compass card and the map one, like the gates and whatnot. How many did you hire, and should you hire more than? You're looking at maybe perhaps hiring more manpower?
I don't get into shoulds because I wasn't here when the people were brought on. I don't know all the exact numbers, but it was a combination of the full-time station attendant staff, so the STAs, in both, by the way, the Canada Line and the Millennium Expo. Temporary folks that had been brought on through the Compass program and that are in effect being paid for by the Compass program itself. And then in the first week, we had a large number of volunteer staff from throughout the organization who were helping out at the stations.
But do you think, but I'm trying to find out how many were there altogether, and just, is that not enough to deal with this problem here?
Look, you never have enough, right? You never have. You could populate the stations with many people. I think the decision was made that it was the right number, that it was an adequate number. And candidly, as I've moved around the system, when I've been at stations, the station attendants are quite visible. They're there. So what's the correct number? I don't know. What the correct number is, that's one of the things we'll be evaluating over the next couple of months.
The other question I had was just in regards to the 94% take-up rate. In the other places that you've been, have you had a full turnover from like paper tickets to the Compass or to the Orca, so that they couldn't actually use other forms of...
Absolutely, that's exactly what we did in the Seattle region. The San Francisco Bay Area, they implemented that. They started up their smart card system roughly the same time we did in the Puget Sound region. It was replacing a plethora of paper types of fare media and cash. So yeah, it is going from an old style where there's way too many pieces of fare media that introduce, amongst other things, the potential for fare evasion, moving to a singular unified system called smart card.
Okay, we have do you use CKW?
Yeah, when is HandyDart users going to be able to use Compass?
So I believe in the fall. So our program in the fall is we're working with the advocacy groups, our customers, support organizations to implement that piece sometime in the fall. I don't know exactly when. Sarah, what's the timing for HandyDart target right now?
Our expectations are in the fall.
In the fall. So that is actually, the closure of the gates is the mostly what I would call the penultimate element of the rollout of Compass. The HandyDart's really the last piece.
Do you have a discrete percentage on the amount of journeys done by the Compass card? It says here 94% Compass card and tickets. Do you have any percentage for just Compass card?
Well, so we have 1.1 million taps yesterday. How many journeys that turns into? Because that's more than the journeys, because those are linked trips. Those are multiple trips because people transfer between bus and rail and so forth. I don't know.
We can get
you that information.
I have one question. Right now, we buy the ticket on the bus, just only can be used in the bus. So when can we get the tickets? Can be used both bus and the subway or TransLink or Canada Line or SkyTrain station?
The Compass card is the device to use on all of the modes. I'm not sure what you mean.
Yeah, but if you buy the first day.
You mean a transfer ticket on the bus?
Yeah.
So when we implemented Compass, and I'm pretty sure TransLink made this very clear in its marketing, and by virtue of the fact that 94% of the transactions are by Compass card, there was no longer a free transfer between bus and rail. You have to use a Compass card. And that's for an efficiency purpose. So if you board the bus first and you get a transfer ticket, you can't use that on SkyTrain. You're going to have to then get a ticket to get into SkyTrain.
That means
so you have to pay twice.
Yes.
So what you do is what we want, and what I want all of your viewers to know, is get a Compass card, and then you don't have to pay twice.
So down the road, is there a plan to maybe let the bus issue chip tickets? There's no plan.
No, there are no plans for that now, and that would, down the road maybe worth considering. But I think the transit industry worldwide is increasingly thinking of going cashless anyway.
But in London and Dubai, are doing
correct. Yes, London went cashless, and I think pretty successfully. They got to a point, by the way, where the Oyster card in in London was at a 99% rate. And that once they got to 99, they said, okay, we can go cashless now. So we're already at 94. But the reason that the industry worldwide is increasingly interested in going cashless is because cash collection on the buses is really very expensive. You have to have the fare boxes. You have all that cash you have to count and deposit. The cash handling is very expensive. So if we can get to a point where the ability for people to use prepaid fare media, smart cards, or eventually mobile devices, there's lots of mobile ticketing now for folks who may not want to get a plastic card. We're on the cusp of that, and that's something we're looking at. But that's another reason that we want to encourage all of our customers, get a Compass card. You get your fare break by having your free transfer between bus and rail.
So a tourist would end up paying twice, would end up paying twice if they don't want to buy a Compass card?
If they don't want to buy a Compass card, yes, tourists would pay twice. And down the road, that's where we were starting to experiment with that, or we'll be experimenting in Seattle probably later this year. Other properties throughout the world are using mobile ticketing. So that might be a complementary element of our program going forward. That's where people who aren't regular users of your system, tourists or people who are just visiting town for a day and want to use the system, they don't want to have to necessarily fumble with a ticket vending machine. They could do something right on their smartphone. But that's down the road for us.
Last question from John.
A very small point of clarification. The 1.1 million taps, does that include the tap outs?
Yes, I believe so. Does that include the tap outs? No, those are distinct. That's not a tap out. So that's the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, by the way, when you moved here, did you use Ms. Gulf's Realty? It's an inside joke.
Sorry, we do have one question over here.
Is that a trick question? I don't know. I don't know what that is.
Over here. You ready?
Is that a transit agency? I don't know. I don't transit agency.
Oh, I have a question. I have a friend who takes the SkyTrain to the airport every day for work, and he's having to pay $9 each way just to get to work and back. Is there a way that they can change that so he can pay a regular fare?
I don't know that circumstance. I know that there's a surcharge when you board at the airport, I believe. That was part of the deal to build the Canada line. So that might be, I don't know the details of that.
One more question for you here. There was not very good guidance about what would happen when we went from the 3 zone to a 1 zone system, whether in the buses, whether TransLink would lose or gain money. Do you know how we are doing? Are we gaining money, losing money?
No, I'd love to be able to tell you all today, because that was as we were thinking about starting to announce some of the early results of the gate closures, talk about revenue and what it's done. It's too soon for us to be able to talk about revenue, and the issue on the buses as well. I have not seen data that's really reliable data at this point. Like the 1.1 million or the 91%, really easy. That's in the moment from the smart card system. It can report that information. Revenue calculation is a lot different for a lot of different reasons. So that we have to collect that information over time. I will be very eager to see it myself, and I will be very eager to share that information as soon as we have information that's useful.
And that would include whether we're gaining or losing fare agent as well.
And on top of that, are more people making notice that all the trends and more people coming on the North Shore taking buses rather than taking DC buses? Is that what your numbers on that yet?
I do know we ended last year at TransLink. Best I can give you on maybe both of those questions. Ridership was up throughout the system by 1.8% last year. So what's driving that? The economy, jobs, maybe to a certain degree going in one zone on the bus. Those are the issues that folks here are working on and trying to tease out what's driving some of that. That's why I'm just as anxious as anyone else to see that data.
All right. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.